we can reject the null hypothesis. Now remember, in simple linear regression, when we test the significance of individual coefficient, the null hypothesis by default is beta 1 is equal to 0, okay, versus beta 1 is not equal to 0. So that means this coefficient is highly significant. It looks like if you are hiring a more reputable underwriter, the underpricing will be even higher. Okay. Now I will explain this when we switch back to our course notes. It's very interesting. If you ran the regression using earlier data, you will find that this regression coefficient actually is negative. A more reputable underwriter is associated with lower underpricing. If you include data from later period, okay, the coefficient turns into positive and significant. So how to explain the difference when you ran the regression using data from different time period? Now you have to understand the institutional. Yes, please speaking.
Yes, Professor. Can you go back to the slide
why it is statistical significant?
Based in the p-value.
Yeah, p-value. There's a p-value here.
Yeah.
What else? You make a decision when you run the analysis and do the hypothesis testing. What else do you use?
Probably the significance F, the F.
In the simple linear regression, yes, F test is not the same as T test, but they are equivalent. But that's not the best answer for this question. You're going to use the T test. Okay, I've talked about two methods to perform the hypothesis test. The first one is given alpha, you find the critical value T, and you can calculate T observed and compare this T observed with the T value. Okay, now if you go to the T table, you will find that for 1% level of significance, when sample size is really large, a T value, the critical value will be around 2.76 or something like that. So this T value is greater than that critical value, so your conclusion will be reject the non-hypothesis. That's one way to do hypothesis testing, right? The other way to do the test is once you have the T observed, you can calculate the p-value and compare p-value with alpha to make a decision. If p-value is less than alpha, we reject the non-hypothesis. If a p-value is equal to alpha, we just reject the non-hypothesis. P-value greater than alpha, we do not reject the non-hypothesis. This p-value is so small, it's almost close to 0. So it doesn't matter what is the alpha you are using, you will be confident to reject the non-hypothesis because the commonly used alpha will be 1, 5, or 10%. So are you clear now?
Yes, Professor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now I know I provided lots of details, but if you are reading the textbook will provide equally amount of details. I encourage you to go over the course notes carefully to prepare for the final exam early on, instead of wait until the last week and you have several hundreds of pages of notes to look at. So this is the information we use to make a determination whether we should reject the non-hypothesis or not. Either use t-test or use the p-value. Normally we use the p-value because it's easier. It's also because the software package does not know which alpha you're going to use. Now with p-value, it will be easier. Okay. So this is the output for the regression analysis. I mentioned that there are some institutional background change for the IPO process. In later 1990s, okay, the analyst coverage becomes important. Some investment banks, they will assign some analysts to follow certain companies to make a recommendation. One view for analyst coverage is we believe this is a sort of a service. Given that it's a service, then you have to pay for the service. Okay. In the IPO market, the investment bank, they will charge for commission, but they don't compete for commission. Why? Because this is, we call that 7% solution. Most investment bank, they will charge the commission around 7%. So they don't compete for the commission. In order to compensate the investment bank for providing analyst coverage, you compensate the investment bank in an indirect way, which is underpricing. So that's why if you are using early data to run a regression, most likely this coefficient will be negative and significant. Okay. That result indicates if you are hiring a more reputable underwriter, the underpricing will be lower. So we call this certification effect. You use the underwriter's reputation to certify your value as an initial public offering company. But later on, because analyst coverage plays an important role in this market, the underpricing is used as the indirect way to compensate the investment bank, and consequently, this coefficient becomes positive and significant. So what I'm trying to say is, when you are trying to analyze data, you have to know the data so well. Not only you have to know the detail in the data, you have to know the background where the data is coming from. Okay. Now this is especially true if you are doing the data analytics or in a finance profession. You have to know this institutional background to better understand data, to find some meaningful pattern and use those patterns you identified as a profitable opportunity. Okay, another example. Now we define a new variable called overhang. Now this is another simple question: does overhang affect underpricing? So we are running a regression, underpricing is our y. On this side, the overhang is our x. Now, what is exactly overhang? That's a pre-IPO outstanding share divided by total share sold in IPO. For example, before the IPO, you have 1,000 shares. Okay, in the IPO, you can sell 100 shares. You can sell 800 shares. The question here is, which one is likely to be associated with a higher or lower underpricing? Okay. So how to understand this? If you look at the first situation, you have 1,000 shares outstanding. During the IPO, you only sell 100. If you think about the dilution, in which case the company is more diluted. Now, obviously, is this one, right? From a shareholder perspective, in which case you are more concerned about the underpricing. So that's a question probably will match the practice in the IPO market. So let's first take a survey to see what is your opinion or what is your guess. You can take a guess, no problem for it. Yes means the coefficient you believe to be positive or you expect to be positive. No, the coefficient you believe or expect to be negative. Notice that in this case, the overhang will be higher, and in this case, the overhang will be lower. Okay. So now the question is, when you have a higher overhang, whether you will have a higher underpricing or the other way around. Now 7 says positive, now 6 to 6. 6 says positive, 6 says negative. Put yourself in a situation in which case you will be more concerned about the underpricing, say, is too high or too low. So let's first look at the regression output. You can run the regression on your own site. You have data, you have the variable definition, you can do that. Now you will notice that beta coefficient now actually is positive. Okay, so if you are selling 100 shares in the IPO, the underpricing will be higher. If you are selling 100 shares in the IPO, the underpricing will be lower. Now, how to explain the relationship? Think about the first situation. If you are selling $100, so we talk about a concept called money left on the table. Okay, for this $100, maybe the stock price increased from $5 to $10. Okay, so for this 100 share, you could have sold the company for $10. You end up with $5. The difference, 10 minus 5, is the money left on the table. You left $500 on the table. However, the rest 900 shares will be valued at $10. As a shareholder, you are more concerned about your overall wealth level. Okay, for this case, you left $4,000 on the table. Now you only have $200 shares, which will be valued at $10. So if you are the issuing company, you will be more concerned about the underpricing in this case. You are trying to reduce underpricing where you are selling a large portion of your shares at IPO. Okay, in this case, because you are only sell a small portion of your shares at IPO, you do not care about the underpricing as much. So that is the explanation for this particular regression relation, which should be positive. So let's look at another example. Now we define a new variable called adjust. If you remember, when the investment bank bring a company to roadshow, the investment bank collect information and they can make adjustment for the final offering price. So the final offering price can be adjusted within the range of the filing, lower filing and higher filing. Now, sometimes the adjustment can be moved out of the boundary. So your final offering price can be higher than the high filing, can be lower than the low filing. Let's look at an example. For example, we have a filing range, I'm making it up, okay, from $4 to $6. So the middle point will be $5. So that is our expected offering price. Let's say the final offering price is set at the $7. So this offering price is even higher than the higher boundary. Let's calculate the adjustment that is 40% price adjustment over the expected offering price. Okay, so if you are running a regression using underpricing as the dependent variable and adjustment as the independent variable, what is your expected sign of an adjustment? Okay, so if the investment bank upward adjustment to a higher percentage, would that be associated with a higher underpricing or lower underpricing? So that's the question we should think about. Your independent variable is adjusted. Yes means you believe the relation is positive. No means you believe the relation is negative. Seven positive or 9 positive. That means you believe when the investment bank adjusts the price higher during the roadshow, the company will have a higher underpricing, means you are going to take more discount, right? So underpricing is an indirect cause of going public. So when you believe the relation is positive, that means if the investment bank upward adjust the final offering price to a larger percentage, you believe the underpricing will be higher. So I should say, if you run a regression, I'm not sure whether I have the outcome or not, no. If you run a regression, the regression result is positive and significant. Then the next step is, how do you interpret this relationship? You should ask yourself why the investment bank can upward adjust final offering price. It must be the case the investment bank received some favorable information during the roadshow. Now, if you are an investor, if someone asks you, what do you want to pay for the company? Even though you think this is really a great company, you may not truthfully review your opinion. So why should I say this company worth $20 and in the case that you want to sell the company only for $10? I will not tell you the truth, right? I would rather say maybe $80 is a better price. Of course, I'm going to all in to buy the company and make a profit. So in order for the roadshow to work, in order for those investors, they want to review their truthful information for the value of the company, you have to compensate those companies. Otherwise, nobody will tell you the truth. Am I stupid? I tell you the company worth $20 and I end up paying higher price for the company. Now this is true only when you are compensated for my information. You have to pay for the information. So now you can see how this works. I'm telling you the company actually worth more, so you can upward adjust your price. You have the benefit. What is the benefit? You can raise more fund in the IPO. The consequence is the company has a higher pricing. So I make more money in this case because the price is higher. So each party is happy. And this will work in the IPO market. So one party truthfully review their information. The other party take the information, set a higher offering price, raise more fund. And the company is more underpriced, so the party truthfully review their information, they also get compensated. So that is the true relationship here. So again, eventually I noticed that the majority of the student body will do a dissertation. Now you have to think about how to ask a meaningful question, why it is interesting, why it is important. Okay. There is another question I leave for you to do some practice. Now you will notice that if you look at the offering price P0, some are set as integer, say for example $7. Okay, some are set as a non-integer, for example $7.25. So if you group them into two subsample, one subsample the offering price is an integer, the other subsample the offering price is a non-integer. Now we are able to code this two group as 1 versus 0. So this is a qualitative data. So we ran a regression with pricing as our dependent variable, this binary variable as our independent variable. Which group do you believe to have a higher underpricing or lower underpricing? That can be a practice. And this is a paper published in JFQA, which is a top ranking finance journal of financial and quantitative analysis. If you are interested, you can search on the Google Scholar to find the paper. Okay, now using integer, non-integer IPO as the keywords. Now the paper provides detail regarding how they perform the analysis and what conclusion they derive and how they interpret their findings. So I leave this for you as some practice if you are interested to do so. There are many other questions we can ask. Okay, so next semester, I expect you to be able to ask a question and find some data to perform the analysis and work on that as a final project toward the stats 2. This semester, I don't have that requirement because this is just a start for the MSc program. We can also set the just as dependent variable. We can find another variable to explain the price adjustment during the roadshow. Which company or what type of company is more likely to be associated with a higher price adjustment during the roadshow? You can ask some question like that. Okay. So this is the end for the simple linear regression. Any question for that? For the example, for the conclusion, for the assumption, any question? No? Okay. Then